Hello, hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kathleen Darby. I wanted to make this video because I recently just hung up my university degree. This is my BFA diploma, which I completed about 2 years ago, so it's about time that I freaking hung it up, but I guess I moved and everything. And it's almost been 3 years since I completed my Bachelor of Arts in Digital Art. And today I really just wanted to go through a couple tips of what would have helped me when I was going through art school and how to make the most of your art school education at university. So here we go. Okay, so the first step that I wanted to go over to make the most out of your art school education is to really understand what your degree is and all the classes that are required to complete your major and graduate. So what I actually did when I was a freshman, which I'm a little crazy with my scheduling of content and classes and all of that stuff, but what I really did is I wrote out everything that I wanted to do by term, and I actually found that for you guys. So here it is. We can go through that right now. I called it my 4-year plan. And basically I gridded out all of the different terms that I would be taking, because the University of Oregon is in a trimester system, so there's about 3 different terms per year plus summer, which is not required, but maybe you'll need to take summer classes if you're gonna graduate on time. And so I wrote out everything that I wanted to take and all the prerequisites for different courses, just trying to figure out a rough schedule of all of the classes that I wanted to take and when I might take those classes. And of course things won't always go to plan. I mean, I showed this to my peers when I was a freshman. They're like, oh yeah, right, that's not, going to be how your 4 years is going to go at university. And of course it's not, but the point is to really just plan out an idea of what you need to be taking. Like, am I going to be taking 3 studios at once? That might be too hard. Am I going to be, working during university? Am I going to be, do I have to take French, this year and next year, which is what I had to do? And really just make sure that you have time for each of the classes and that you're progressing in the time that you need to. You don't want to get to senior year and figure out that you have a writing class, that you should have taken the first term of school. You really don't want to, be going backwards essentially, and you want to make sure that you're building up and, balancing the academic general ed classes and the studio classes, because studios are really, really intense, or they can be. And I know at the University of Oregon, they don't want you to take more than 2 at a time, which is kind of impossible actually with how everything works out. But there was a couple terms where I took 4 studios at a time, and that's really not for everyone. But I made it work, I guess. It was very stressful at times, but anyways, planning ahead can maybe, make you figure out what you want to do per term. And maybe you won't graduate in 4 years, and maybe that's okay for you. And so that's my first tip, is really just to make a schedule, look at all the prerequisites for your degree, just to get an idea. Because a lot of classes are only offered per se, maybe fall term or spring term. Maybe it's a class where you have to take 101, 102, 103 of something like French or language or math or other general eds that you have to take in a certain order to fit in. My next tip is to get a job on campus. So I got a job when I was a freshman. It was February of my freshman year in college, and I heard about a graphic design position on campus for the University of Oregon Housing Marketing Office. And at that time, I didn't really know exactly what graphic design was or what that all entailed even. I mean, I was in digital arts, but at that time, I was pretty good at Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, but I hadn't really used InDesign much, and I hadn't done a lot of graphic design and typesetting and things like that. But I think, I went in for that interview, and I think they saw my potential, and that I could potentially stay with them for many years, going through school, which I did. I stayed in that office for 3 years, maybe even 4 years as a graphic designer. And, getting that experience as a graphic designer on campus was actually way more valuable to me than my actual degree at the end, because I came away from college with a degree and with 3 years experience as a graphic designer. It may have been part-time, but that experience is way more valuable just because it's actually, what you'd be doing in the real world. And you really should find something like that. There's so many jobs on campus that could be related to your degree. So that maybe the journalism department needs, a marketing design person, or like our health center had one, housing had one. Maybe you could be a lab tech for the ceramic studio, or, help with the laser printers or things like that. Usually there always has to be someone in the labs for the art studios, and they need to be monitored. And so if you're kind of a trusted student and know how that equipment works really well, you can apply and be one of those people and actually either get credit or money for helping out there. And so you get some cash, you get, something to put on your resume while you're in school, and you're not just coming out of your degree with just an education. You can have some experience in there as well, maybe throw in an internship or something like that. Really, that's my biggest advice, probably, is to try to get a job. My next tip is to use the studio space. You're really going to regret once you are out of university and you don't have a painting studio, and you don't have a printmaking studio, or you don't have, ceramics space. Really use that to your advantage, because while you're there, a lot of the painting materials that you use are toxic, like solvents, and they have a place to dispose of those. And my painting studio also had an air filtration system where you wouldn't really get sick from breathing in all the fumes. And there's a lot of little things like that you take for granted while you're in school. Like, oh yeah, okay, I'm in, painting studio, or, I can use the emulsion and the all the materials for a printmaking studio. And that's all just gone, once you graduate. And so make sure that you're, going in, even if you don't have a project, and, painting on the weekends or whatever it is. Just make sure that you use that while you can. Another thing that you should be using materials-wise is renting materials. You can go to the university library or your department, or even a different department, and rent something, like maybe it's a camera, or maybe it's a tripod or something else to help you, do your projects. There's a lot of free equipment around universities, and you can take advantage of that. Even if it's not for a school project, it doesn't really matter. Once you're enrolled in that university, you have access to a lot of different things. You have access to movies, and the library has a lot of, great materials that you could be using. And also just make sure that you check departments that are not your own. Like, I remember the digital arts department that I was a part of had terrible materials. They had the worst cameras and everything, but you go over to the journalism, or even just like the public library for the whole university, and they have better materials. So just make sure that you look around, and there's a lot of resources around you everywhere, because it's an education, it's an institution for your education. The next tip that I have is to, use your professor's office hours. Go to them. They're there for a reason. Every professor has hours every week that you can just show up to their office and ask them questions, get to know them, maybe ask, how you're doing in the class, what you can improve on, maybe a more honest critique that they won't, say in class, that kind of stuff. And also the relationships that you have with your professors, your GTFs, the other faculty around you are really beneficial. And there's been times, like after I've graduated, one of my art professors, he actually has used me to help him with his own personal business, designing logos and screen prints and stuff like that. And your professors know your work, and they know you better than a lot of people, because you spend so much time in their classes and critiquing and all of that stuff. And so if you are building a really good repertoire, with your teacher, that can really pay off in the future. You don't know who they know. That you don't know, maybe they have a connection to an ad agency, maybe they have a connection to a gallery that you could use. That it's just really beneficial in that sense. Going into that also is go to networking events. Go to, the different events around your city that maybe people in your university are a part of. Start a club even. I started with some friends a University of Oregon art club, and we would go and critique each other's work outside of hours and essentially just get more involved in your community around you. Go to the local art museum, go to the Saturday market and meet other artists. All of that good stuff can really pay off in the future. Another thing that future you will really appreciate is to organize your art files. Document your work. Make sure you have adequate notes of your stuff. Make sure that all of the files are organized and you can find them years and years later. I mean, for example, I just found that schedule example that I made when I was a freshman of all the different classes I wanted to take and when I would take them and that kind of stuff. There's no way I could have found that if I didn't name it properly or put it in the right folder. I mean, that file is 5 or 6 years old by now, and there's no way that I could have just whipped that out of thin air if I didn't put it in the right place. Also make sure that you have video, also make sure that you have a way to store all that, back it up with different, drives and all that kind of stuff. Because in the future, you're gonna graduate, and then you're gonna have, all of this work that you made in college, which might be great, and you want to show in your portfolio. And that's kind of the point, right? Is to get a job or to market yourself of what you can do as an artist. And if you don't have images, videos, documentation, process of how you made that work, when you made that work, maybe your artist statement, don't lose those. Just keep it all super organized. That's really going to pay off in the future. Going into all of that documentation stuff as well, employers like to see your process, how you think logically, how would you solve a problem. They don't want to see exactly personal projects all the time. They want to say, this is the exact requirements that I had. Maybe it's still a school project, but you say, I needed to follow these guidelines, and this is how I did that, from maybe a sketch, conception, to developing the idea, to different iterations, rounds, different color palettes, and all of that. Just make sure that you still have all of that information so that in the future you can make a portfolio that shows not only what you do, but how you did it and your process, so that they can understand you as a designer, as an artist better, and that maybe they'll be more likely to hire you. Another tip is to take advantage of the online or business art classes that your university offers. So at the University of Oregon, we had something called AAA or PODs, and they were online classes that were 1 to 2 credits each that were of other university kids, and there was a university professor that was usually on campus, but most of the work was done online. It's through email, through online different workspaces, and you can take classes that are helping you with your portfolio or helping you with your resume, or how to be a freelancer, how to start your own business. And there's a lot of things like that you might not know, and regular art school does not teach it normally. I mean, at least the University of Oregon didn't have a 4-credit class of how to market yourself as an artist or anything like that. So take all of that when you can get it. I think that really paid off, and it's something that's really good to think about if you can afford to take those classes additionally to your undergraduate degree requirements. Also, take care of yourself when you're a student. School's really, really stressful, and it's really important that you eat well, that you go to the gym. The gym is often a place that for universities is free for you to use. Go there, just to unwind, stay in shape, don't gain your freshman 15. Just make sure that you're using all the other resources around campus that you can. There's just so much to, that I wish that I still had access to now as a graduate, and, it just helps. Like when I also took classes to stay in shape a little bit. I took tap dance, modern and ballet dance. I took African drumming, which is really fun. It's a good stress reliever just to beat on a drum, for a couple hours a week. And some yoga, that was also really beneficial. The last advice I have for making the most out of your art school education is to graduate. So it's not going to help anyone if you spend all this money and get halfway through an art education and you bail out because of whatever reason. once you go a certain point in your art education, say you're 3 years into it, you might as well just do that extra year and graduate with that degree, because you're already, neck high in loans and all that kind of stuff and student debt. And it's not going to help anyone if you drop out and all of that kind of stuff. So make sure that you have a plan, that you stick to it. It can evolve over time. Maybe your interests evolve, maybe your major changes slightly in there. Just make sure that you are on the right track to graduate, and if that's what you want to do, which I assume it is if you are at a university for art. All right, that is all I have for you guys about how to make the most of your art education at the university, and other topics that I wish I had known as an undergrad or maybe a high schooler going into the university system. So I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I hope that it was helpful. If you have any other tips for students going into an art degree, please leave those down below. Maybe I'll do an update video with some more helpful tips that are not just my own. And I really hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.